All right. Our sermon reading today, John 21, verses 20 to 22. And here's what John writes for us. Remember, this is a conversation taking place between Jesus and Peter, and John is right there hearing this, and then he writes it later for us. He says, Peter turned and saw the disciple whom Jesus loved was following them. Guess who that is? That's John. This is what John called himself, the disciple whom Jesus loved. I like that terminology. And you see, this was the one who had leaned back against Jesus at the supper and had said, Lord, who is it going to betray you? I need you to say it's me. I don't know, but this is what he puts for us. And then Peter saw him. He asked, Lord, what about him? And Jesus answered, if I want him to remain alive until I return, what is that to you? You must follow me. You must follow me. See, we've joined in on this conversation, haven't we? A conversation between Jesus and Peter on the shore of the Sea of Galilee, just weeks after Jesus' resurrection. Jesus started with a question, do you love me? And Peter got that chance to say, yes, Lord, I love you. You know that I love you 3 times over. And it was interesting. This past week, I was down at annual conference for 3 days. It felt like 10. No, I'm just kidding. It was 3 days down there at annual conference. There was some neat stuff happening there. Got to hear our new bishop share with us an inspiring message, Bishop Trimble. And one of the things he said, which I loved in the midst of this, is our bishop said this, and I wrote this down. He said, loving Jesus is our first mission. Everybody believe that? That's true. Loving Jesus is our first mission. Loving people, our second mission. See, this is what we're about. It's got to be about loving Jesus. And then it was followed in this conversation between Jesus and Peter by a command where Jesus says, tend my sheep, take care of them. I've shown you how to love people, how to care for people. You need to continue in this process. And this was followed by a prediction. You will go where you do not want to go. And a couple weeks ago, we talked about this. Sometimes the things that happen in our lives, we don't want them to happen. We don't want the place where we are called to go to be, but yet we still go there. You're going to go where you don't want to go. And that was followed by another call, which was to follow Jesus into the ministry. See, today we're going to look at Peter's response to Jesus' prediction, and this is what his prediction was right here. And today's message can be tough, and it's going to be tough for us. It's tough because I think Peter strikes a nerve. He asks a question, and it reveals how many of us feel when we say things like, I don't think this is fair, God. I'm not sure I like this. I'm not sure I want this. See, Peter's not sure he likes Jesus' prediction of going where he doesn't want to go because he knows what it is. It's a cross. And later on in life, we find out he gets there. So his first reaction is to take his eyes off of Jesus and to turn around to John and say, well, if I have to do this, what about him? What is he going to do? See, I'm feeling like I'm getting a bum deal here, Jesus. Is John going to get preferential treatment over me? Is he going to have it easier? Am I going to have it harder? Do I have to sacrifice more? Is he going to be more popular? Is he going to get a better paycheck than I'm going to get? What is going to happen here in the midst of this? I think the key for us today is a statement Bishop Schnase said, and I think this is so powerful for us if we can get a hold of this. He says, envy causes us to want to be what we were never created to be, someone else. Everybody get it? Everybody hit? I'm going to say it again. Envy causes us to be something we were never created to be, someone else. You know what that means? You were created to be you. Wow, isn't that great? You come to church, you learn some really powerful stuff, don't you? You were created to be you. And today's focus is to be who you were created to be and give it all that you have. Don't worry about others, who they are, what they're called to do. That's not our business. Following Jesus and what we're called to do is our business. So Jesus and Peter, as it seems, are walking down the shore, and he notices John is following them. And immediately he turns his attention from Jesus and begins to focus on John. Well, what about him? What's in store for him? And Jesus quickly sets him straight. Do you notice that? What's that to you? He says. If I want John to remain alive until I return, what is that to you? I think if Jesus were speaking it kind of in the vernacular of the day, it would be something like, what if I told you it was none of your business what happens to John? Or maybe some of the other ways you could say it is, none ya. You ever heard that one? None ya. None ya business. Or if it were at my house, it would be, Jesus would say, A, B, Peter, C, your way out. And that's what they say. That's kind of how it is. Peter, what will happen to John is not your business. It's not your concern. Your business, your concern is to focus upon me and follow me. That's what I've created you to do, and who I've created you to be. And I think if we truly caught the power of the truth of this, it's going to set us free. Your business, he said it to Peter, I think he's saying it to us today. Everybody listening? Your business is to follow Jesus and be the person that you were created to be and do the things that you were created to do. Can we do that? That's who we are. How many of us struggle with that idea of the envy, the jealousy? Always thinking you get the short straw when they start drawing. Anybody else get that? I've always kind of had that complex within my life. I don't know why, why it pops out. And I was just talking with Kathy a week or two ago, and a very interesting thing. See, when I was in my early 30s, which I tried to share this morning, was just a few short years ago, and it's getting harder to pass that off every time, I know. The best appointment someone in their early 30s got was a multi-point charge where you had a bunch of different little churches, or maybe you'd get a little church, okay? Now, it might not have been quite that small, but it felt like it sometimes. And that's all you could get in those days. That's just the way it was. And I had two very good friends who pastored a certain church in our conference. And this church was a kind of a neat church because it was a new church build, and it was a new facility, and it had hundreds of people. And as a pastor where I was at that time, that was like the dream church, you know. That was the place you wanted to go. But no way in the world was I, at early 30s, going to get appointed to a church like that. You know what I just found out this past week? They just appointed to that very church pastor in his early 30s. And immediately, I take my eyes off Jesus and I go, what? No way, Jesus, why? I had to, he gets it so much easier than I got it. Mine was so much harder. Why does, come on. What's up with this? Just like Peter, I look away from Jesus, and I think someone's gotten it easier than I had it. Of course, Kathy sets me straight as she always does. And she said, well, Tom, would you want to be appointed there right now? And I said, oh, goodness, no, I would never want to be appointed there whatsoever. But it's the principle. How come, it just frustrates me. I know pastors. I know lots of pastors. And I know some pastors who literally, I said this morning, can't preach their way out of a paper bag. And they get these large churches and all this stuff going on. And immediately, you know what I do? I go, what? Why did they get easier than I do? And I can say these things, I guess, jokingly with you because, and I mean this with all seriousness, I love it here. I love this city. I love this neighborhood. I love my neighbors. I love this church. I love the people of this church. I love my staff. I love the ministries that are happening here. I love it here. And if I was to say, Kathy, I'm going to go to another church, you know what she would say? Fine, let me know where you stop because I'm staying right here. And that's okay. And then my biggest fear of that, I said this morning, is that I'd be gone for 3 months and people wouldn't know I was gone because as long as Kathy and the boys were here, they'd be fine with it. And I'm used to that because everybody loves Kathy more than me. And it's okay that you can do that because she's lovable. She's lovable. It's okay. But here's the focus of what we're going to look at today. Today I'm asking you to do something. Are you ready? Will you trust God? Will you trust who you are and who you've been created to be by God? Will you trust that God is perfectly preparing you to be and to do the things that you were created to do? Could you trust that? Can you keep your eyes on Jesus, the task that he's given you, and simply follow him? Good chance at the end of the year I'm going to be preaching something on this. And Kathy told me when I do this, she goes, oh, you should have a huge campaign with all this stuff. And basically this is what the theme is, okay? You be you, let God be God. You just be you. Don't worry about everybody else. You know, I love it when people say, okay, draw a circle. Okay, stand inside of it. Now everybody that you have to worry about, right here. Don't worry about all them. This is where it takes place. You be you. Let them be them. Let God be God. Could you trust that God has created you? God has molded you. God has been at work in your life, preparing you to be the perfect person for the thing that you've been called to do? Well, I don't know. Please don't try to be somebody else. Please don't feel inferior because you've not been called to do something that someone else has been called to do. Please don't base your success in God's eyes and plan based on what someone else is doing, because success is this: you being you, who you've been created to be, you being faithful, following Jesus, and that is success in life and in ministry. Success. It doesn't matter. Well, someone else looks like they have more success. You don't know what's going on over there. See? What does Jesus say? Peter, don't worry about John. You worry about yourself and following me. See how different that is? You be you, let me be me. See, it's focus on Jesus. Focus where Jesus is at work in our life and what we're called to do. Because God simply asks us to be faithful to that. I have never been called to be a pastor at Saddleback Church out in California. They have like 15, 20,000 members. Or Willow Creek in Chicago with 15,000 members. Or even Granger over here with 10,000 whatever members they have and all that. You know what? But that's okay. That's not who I'm supposed to be. That's not who God created me to be. On the other hand, those pastors and the things going on over there, they're not called to what I'm called to. They're not called to balance ministry and family care and the things that we have to do here. See, this is who I am, who I have to be faithful with. Not look out over there and go, oh, they have it so much better because they're more popular. They have books out there. They get seen on TV, or whatever that is. Don't worry about John. Peter, put your eyes on me and follow me. Follow me. Be who you're created to be. It might be good, it might be bad. There might be more sacrifice than someone else, there might be less sacrifice. It might be better, it might be worse. You might be richer, you might be poor, you might have sickness, you might have health. Sounds like a wedding, doesn't it? We're up here. We are called to different things, and we are going to be held accountable to our faithfulness to what we have been called to, which is going to look different for everyone. And I guarantee you that there are pastors and churches out there that look so awesome on the outside, and you look and they go, look at all the members, look at all that they have, and they are not being faithful to what God has called them to be, and in God's eyes, they are not being successful, because just because you have lots of people around or just because something's happening does not mean you're being successful in God's eyes. You are successful in God's eyes. Why? Anybody catch on to this yet? I have to keep saying it. Because you were created to do one thing, and when you're faithful to do it, you're successful in everything God wants you to be and to do. And each part has a different part to play, and we can't expect others to be completely committed to my part, but they have to be committed to their part. Does that understand? Because we're going to start talking about it as a church as well, not just individually. See, I love the example of David. 1 Samuel 17, there's a story. Now David, he was the youngest. He was the brother who was younger. He was shorter than the rest. I understand how that goes in a family. And he was the one he was the shepherd boy who they put out in the outer fields. Go take care of some sheep out there. That's just the way it is. So here's David. He's this young shepherd boy, and he's the smaller one. He's always out there. But he's the one who in 1 Samuel 17 fights Goliath. Now, Goliath is a big, big man. Goliath has been a fighting man since he was very young. He's huge. I guess think of the biggest UMA person that you can think of, the strongest person there is. Now add another foot and another 100 pounds maybe. There's Goliath for you, okay? He is a big man, a strong man. Nobody in all of Israel, all the fighting men, will challenge him or go up and stand against him. David says, I'm going to take him on. And of course they had to be thinking, you fool. There's no way. David says, I'm prepared for this. You know how I've been prepared for this? Because someone sent me out to the outer fields with the sheep. But you know when they were out there, guess what? A bear attacked. And you know what I did? I had to take that thing and fight it off, and I killed the bear. A lion attacked, like a mountain lion, came and attacked the sheep. You know what I did? I attacked the thing and I killed it. God has prepared me for battle, and I could take care of this guy. So what does King Saul say? Well, if you're going to do that, you know what you have to do? You have to put on my armor. You have to look like me and be like me if you really think you're going to go out there and take care of that. So he puts his armor on David, and David's like, it doesn't even fit. Takes it all off. Does what he knows, what he's been prepared to do. He picks up his sling, a few smooth stones. He walks out there, and we know the story, don't we? What happens? Phew, boom, boom, it's over. Because God had prepared him for what he was called to do. And he understood it. He also understood where the power came from. You come at me with sword and spear, I come against you in the name of the Lord, of the God of Israel. Boom. Takes care of business. You be you, let God be God. Could you trust God today? That God is perfectly preparing you and putting you into the right spot at the very right time to do amazing things for God's kingdom. See, that gets me excited when I start thinking about this. Because this goes for a church also. I truly believe God is piecing together pieces for us to accomplish an amazing ministry that we're called to accomplish, that only St. Paul United Methodist Church is called to accomplish. Remember, I talked 2 weeks ago, 144 years ago, a group of people got a vision from Jesus who said, this is what you're going to do. You're going to start ministering to this thing called the Riverside community of Elkhart. And 144 years later, we're still trying to carry this thing out, faithfully saying, okay, God, we understand that. This is what we're called to do as St. Paul's, and we are going to do that. And we're going to make it happen. The problem is we go, but God, what about Trinity Church? They seem to have more stuff. What about Faith? What about Hillcrest? What about Granger? Could we just take our eyes off all the other places and be who God wants us to be? We don't have to look like Granger. We don't have to look like Trinity. You know why? We're not called to be Granger or Trinity. Guess who we're called to be? Anybody tell me? I can almost end my sermon now. This is awesome. All right, I'll finish with this. I think you're getting a hold of the idea. 3 ways that we can do what Jesus asks. Not turn around and look at John, but just keep our eyes focused and move forward to what God's calling us. Number 1, Psalm 139. I'm going to go through this a little bit. I know it's hard to read up there. I'm going to read part of this for you. Lord, you made all the delicate inner parts of my body. You knit me together in my mother's womb. Thank you for making me so wonderfully complex. Your workmanship is marvelous, and how well I know it. You watched me as I was being formed, as I was being woven together. You saw me before I was born. Every day of my life recorded in your book. Every moment laid before a single day had passed. How precious are your thoughts about me, oh God. I love the way the psalmist understands. He says, I've been created with purpose and meaning, and here it is as I move forward with it. With forethought, I've been created. It reminds me of Jeremiah 1:5 says this. This is what God speaks to Jeremiah the prophet. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you, or I called you. Before you were born, I set you apart, and I appointed you as a prophet to the nations. I knew who you were. I knew what I'd call you to do because I have forethought and purpose, and here you are. Could you imagine that could you trust that God says, I've created you to be you? You don't have to look like somebody else. You don't have to be somebody else. You have to be you. You. Because I truly believe this, because I know life takes its toll. Life, in a fallen, broken world, bad things happen, and they happen to us as well. I understand that. But I fully believe this with all my heart, what Romans 8:28 tells us. And we know that God causes everything to work together for the good of those who love God and are called according to his purpose. Not that God causes everything to happen, but that God can take everything that does happen and cause it to be good for us and God's purpose. I believe that because God turns garbage into gold. That's how God does. So number one, it's trusting that I've been created perfectly. Number two, can we keep our eyes on Jesus? Our very goal, our primary duty is to fix our eyes on Jesus, not to look around, not to focus on others, not to allow other things to steal our gaze, but just to fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith. Can we just say, okay, I'm not going to turn around and look at John anymore. I'm just going to look at you, Jesus. I know what you've called me to. I'm not sure I like it, but I'm going to follow you and do what I've been called to do. You know, Peter had an earlier incident where he took his eyes off Jesus too. I love this one. Back in Matthew chapter 14, 22 to 33. Stormy night, all the disciples are out in a boat, and they see something coming to them on the water, and they find out it's Jesus walking on the water. Does that not blow you away? Walking on the water. He gets out there. They think he's a ghost. They say, get away from us. He says, it's just me, Jesus. Peter, presumptuous one, says, hey, if it's really you, Jesus, you tell me to walk out there to you. And he says, come on out. So Peter, you believe this? Takes a step right out the boat and starts, boom, walks on water, okay? Takes his eyes off Jesus. And says, boy, those waves are getting kind of big. The wind's blowing kind of hard. And immediately he's gulping seawater. Jesus brings him back up. And I think the beautiful part of that whole story is the very end where it says, and they climbed into the boat together. Jesus, here we are. We're together here. We're going to get back in this thing. See, Jesus is simply saying, Peter, keep your eyes focused on me. And we're going to get where we need to go. And finally, the last one. This is a tough one, too. I guess I would call it do your duty. Luke 17:10, here's what Jesus says. These are harsh, not harsh words, but these are interesting words, as you would say. So you also, when you have done everything you were told to do, you should say, we are unworthy servants and have only done our duty. How often we do something for the Lord, we think, man, I need a couple pats on the back for this one, don't I? I actually was obedient. And God, Jesus says, no, your entire life, you should do everything you were called to do, and you should say, I'm an unworthy servant, God. I've only done my duty as I followed you and kept my eyes on you. Could we do that as a people, as a group? No matter what's laid before us, to simply say, I'm an unworthy servant, and I've simply done my duty. Your calling might be rough. Man, your lot in life might be hard. It might be burdensome. But could we say, just like that beautiful old song, no matter my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. I'm going to end it on this one. Does it seem like others have it easier and you got it? Come on, be honest, come on. Others have it easier, I know. But think about it this way. A good way to look at this is this. Just think of how much God thought of you to say, I will give you the harder track. I will give you the harder thing because I trust that you will be faithful in the midst of it and that you will carry this thing to completion. Wow. Where do you need to trust God more deeply today? What steps might you take to keep your gaze on Jesus and not let it come off to other people and other things? And what steps will you take just to remember that you are called to be you? and you need to let God be God.